The castle of Blackthorn Ridge stood tall against the gray morning sky, its stone walls old and cold, holding secrets that no one alive could fully explain. Inside, in the west tower, a young woman named Alira Voss sat by a narrow window, watching the clouds drift by. She had been there for 3 months now, and every day felt the same. Silence in the morning, silence at noon, silence at night. She was the Luna of Alpha King Draven Ashford, chosen not out of love, but by an old law that bound their two bloodlines together. The Elder Council had arranged the match to strengthen the kingdom, to secure peace between pacts that had once fought bitter wars. Draven had accepted the marriage because he had no choice, but he had never accepted Alira, not truly, not in his heart. On the day their bond was sealed, Draven had barely looked at her. He was a king consumed by duty, hardened by years of leading a kingdom surrounded by enemies. To him, love was a weakness he could not afford, and so, believing that a hidden mate was a safer mate, he had ordered Alira move to the West Tower, away from court, away from danger, away from everyone. "It is for your protection," he had told her, his voice flat and distant. "There are those who would use you against me if they knew who you were to this kingdom." Alira had wanted to argue, to tell him that a locked door did not feel like protection. It felt like punishment. But she had said nothing. She had only nodded, because what else could she do? She had no family left to turn to, no pack of her own, no place else to call home. The tower became her world, and her silence became her armor. At first, she tried to hate him. She told herself that his coldness deserved nothing but her anger, but as the days passed, something strange happened. Her anger softened into sorrow, and her sorrow deepened into something she could not fully name. Despite everything, she still hoped. She still wondered if somewhere beneath his hardened exterior, there was a man who might one day see her, not as a burden, not as a political duty, but as a person worthy of care. Every night, when the candles burned low and the tower grew quiet, Alira allowed herself to cry. She cried for the childhood she barely remembered, for the family she had lost too young, for the loneliness that pressed on her chest like a stone. Her tears fell onto the floor of the tower, onto stones that had been laid there centuries ago, long before Draven, or his father's father, had ever ruled Blackthorn Ridge. What Alira did not know, what no living soul in the kingdom truly remembered, was that those stones were not ordinary. They had been placed by the very first king of the Ashford line, a warrior who had once carried within him an ancient wolf spirit of tremendous power. That spirit had protected the kingdom in its darkest hour, centuries before, and then had gone silent, sleeping through generation after generation, waiting. The old stories said the spirit would only wake for a bond built on true and unshakable love. Not politics, not duty, not fear, only love, given freely, even when it was not returned. No one in the family had believed those stories for a long, long time. They had become nothing more than bedtime tales, told to children to make them feel proud of their bloodline. But stories, sometimes, are older and truer than anyone remembers. Each night that Alira's tears touched the stone floor, something deep beneath the tower stirred, just slightly, like a giant turning in its sleep. It did not wake, not yet, but it listened. Meanwhile, far from the tower, King Draven found himself struggling with troubles of his own. The neighboring pack, led by a fierce and ambitious alpha named Castor Wren, had begun gathering allies, spreading whispers that Draven was a weak king, a leader who had hidden his own mate away, out of fear rather than strength. Castor used this rumor cleverly, turning other packs against Blackthorn Ridge, painting Draven as a coward who could not even stand beside his own wife. Draven heard these rumors through his advisors, and though he told himself he did not care what others thought, the words gnawed at him more than he wanted to admit. He began to feel a strange, creeping unease, one that had nothing to do with politics. At night, his sleep grew restless. He dreamed of eyes that were not his own, golden and ancient, watching him from the darkness. He dreamed of a low growl that seemed to rise, not from his own throat, but from somewhere deep within his very bones. He would wake covered in sweat, his heart pounding, unable to explain what he had seen. He told no one about these dreams, not his advisors, not his warriors, not even himself. In a way, he pushed them aside as stress, as the weight of ruling a kingdom under threat. But the dreams did not stop. If anything, they grew stronger with each passing night, as though something inside him was waking up alongside whatever slept beneath the tower. One evening, unable to sleep, Draven found himself walking the quiet halls of the castle. His steps, without him quite deciding it, carried him toward the west tower. He told himself he was simply checking on the guards, making sure all was secure. But when he reached the base of the tower stairs, he paused, hearing something faint drifting down from above. It was crying, soft, quiet, and full of a sadness that struck him harder than he expected. He climbed the stairs slowly, his hand trailing along the cold stone wall. When he reached the top, he saw her through the crack of the door, Elira, sitting by the window, her knees pulled to her chest, tears falling silently down her face. She did not know he was there. She was not crying for attention, not performing sorrow to win his sympathy. She was simply broken, quietly, in the way people are broken when they believe no one is watching, and no one will ever come. Draven stood there for a long moment, something tightening in his chest that he did not have a name for. He almost stepped inside, he almost spoke her name, but duty called him away before he could. A messenger arrived with urgent news of Castor's forces moving closer to the border. Draven turned and left, telling himself he would return later, that there would be time. There was not as much time as he believed. 3 nights later, Castor Wren launched his attack. Under the cover of darkness, his forces broke through the outer defenses of Blackthorn Ridge, catching Draven's warriors by surprise. The castle erupted into chaos, shouts echoing through the halls, the clash of claws and steel ringing through the courtyard, fire licking at the edges of the outer walls. Draven fought at the front of his warriors, as a king should, refusing to retreat even as the numbers pressed against him grew heavier. He fought with everything he had, cutting down enemy after enemy, but Castor himself was strong, stronger than Draven had accounted for. In a fierce clash near the castle steps, Castor struck him down, a deep wound tearing across his side. Draven collapsed onto the stone, his vision blurring, his strength draining away with each passing second. High in the west tower, Elira heard the chaos below. She heard the screams, the fire, the sounds of a kingdom fighting for its life. And somehow, without being told, she knew. She knew that Draven was in danger. Perhaps it was the bond between them, faint as it was, or perhaps it was simply her heart refusing to accept that the man she had quietly, foolishly, continued to hope for might be dying while she sat locked away, useless and unseen. She pounded on the door, screaming for someone, anyone, to let her out. When no guard came, for they were all fighting for their lives below, she did something she had never dared before. She threw herself against the door, again and again, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, until finally, the old lock gave way, and the door burst open. She ran down the tower stairs faster than she had ever run in her life, her bare feet slapping against cold stone, her heart pounding louder than the chaos outside. She did not think about the danger. She did not think about the fire or the fighting. She thought only of reaching him. When she burst into the courtyard and saw Draven lying on the ground, blood soaking through his clothes, Castor standing over him with a look of triumph, something inside Elira broke completely. A sound tore from her chest, not quite a scream, not quite a sob, but something raw and ancient, a cry born from months of loneliness, from years of loss, from a love she had never been allowed to give. The ground beneath her trembled. Deep below the tower, in the old stones that had waited silently for centuries, something finally answered her call. A power long dormant surged upward, rushing through the earth, through the walls, through the very foundation of the castle, until it reached Draven, where he lay dying. Golden light erupted around him, warm and blinding, and those who saw it would later swear it looked like a great wolf, ancient and glowing, rising from Draven's body and standing over him like a guardian returned from legend. The wound in his side began to close, strength flooded back into his limbs, and when Draven opened his eyes, they were no longer only his own. They held something older, something powerful, something that had slept for centuries and had finally, truly, woken. He rose to his feet in one smooth motion, and the battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Castor, who a moment before had stood victorious, took a step back, fear flashing across his face for the first time. Draven did not need to say a word. The power radiating from him was answer enough. With a strength unlike anything his kingdom had seen in generations, Draven drove back Castor's forces, turning the tide of the battle within minutes. Castor's alliance, built on rumors of weakness, crumbled the moment they witnessed the truth, that Blackthorn Ridge's king held a power no one could have imagined. When the fighting ended and the smoke began to clear, Draven turned and found Alira standing where she had run to him, trembling, exhausted, tears still wet on her cheeks. He crossed the distance between them slowly, as though seeing her, truly seeing her, for the very first time. "It was you," he said quietly, his voice rough with disbelief. "All this time, it was your love that woke it." Alira did not know what to say. She only shook her head, unable to find words for everything she felt. Draven reached out and gently took her hand, something he had never once done since the day they were bound together. "I locked you away because I thought I was protecting you," he said. "But I was only protecting myself, from feeling something I did not think I deserved. I was wrong, Alira. I was wrong about everything." In the days that followed, Draven did what no one expected. He stood before the entire kingdom, before the Elder Council, before every noble and warrior who had once questioned his choices. And he spoke the truth. He told them of his mistake, of the tower, of the loneliness he had forced upon the one person who had never once given up on him. He crowned Alira publicly as his true Luna, not as a political arrangement, but as his equal, his partner, the heart of the kingdom's newly awakened strength. Alira, who had once believed herself forgotten, unseen, and unwanted, stepped forward into the light of the courtyard, no longer hidden, no longer silent. The kingdom that had once whispered about a weak king and a hidden Luna now spoke of a love strong enough to wake an ancient power thought lost to legend. And though the road ahead would not be without its challenges, Alira finally understood something she had almost forgotten during those long, lonely months in the tower. Love, even when ignored, even when locked away, does not simply disappear. Sometimes, it only waits quietly in the dark, gathering strength, until the moment it is finally, truly needed, and then it rises, unstoppable, to change everything.